Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the ultimate beginner's guide to city skylines by creating the city of Trattoria. And today we are introducing the mass transit DLC into the build. So this was a very exciting DLC, but for reasons other than the ones you might suspect. So this DLC did introduce a number of modes of mass transportation, although they're a little niche in my opinion. So the types of transportation that it added were ferries, monorails, cable cars, and blimps, and it also added a number of mass transit hubs. And beyond that, it added a few things that I think are really important to the game. It added a couple of different road types. So let's start out. We'll go through the transportation options that they added. So first of all, if you want to access these transportation options, you go into the transport menu. And the very first one that we'll look at will be right here. This will be blimps. So these are really niche. It's a blimp depot. You can add this and you will get a blimp. I will set one of those up and show you how it works. It's something that is, in my opinion, more of a tourist attraction than an actual method of transportation, but it's still neat nonetheless. Adds a little bit of visual interest to your city. We also have ferries. So you could add a ferry into your city. This is particularly helpful if you have a body of water that you want to cross and you don't want a bridge. Something to keep in mind with these is that there are a couple of issues with these. First of all, you can't use a ferry to cross city services. So if you had a ferry and you wanted to be able to, access an island and you didn't want to have trash collection on the island, it's not going to work for you like that. But it will get people across as pedestrians, so it can be pretty useful in certain limited scenarios. And then cable cars. So if we look at cable cars, this again is pretty niche. I use these a lot in Bluffside Crossing. It can work in situations where you have elevation that you need to be able to get up and down quickly. They actually have pretty good utilization, so we'll show you how to use those as well. But where I'm most excited is two things. First, we have these transportation hubs. So you have a multi-platform end-of-line train station. So this is it's an end-of-line train station with 12 platforms, and it also has metro built right into it. Then we have instead of the end-of-line version, kind of the middle-of-the-line version. So these are excellent in downtown areas. They look really spectacular. I think that they're great assets for the city. And then you have a couple of really interesting options. So you have the ferry bus exchange. So you could have a bus line that actually terminates at a ferry and allows multiple buses to interface there. So it can be an interesting way to integrate the ferries into your bus network. There's also the monorail bus hub, which operates the same way except for monorail. And then the metro monorail train hub. So it's kind of a mixture of the three: metro, monorail, and train, all coming together at once. I use this one in Verde Beach in the Lewis Garden District, and it's really spectacular. And I realized I missed one, and that's monorail. That's probably the one that most of you are going to be interested in if you're looking at integrating a new mode of transportation. This is the one that people really love. There are some really interesting use cases for this. I think that with all of these, it helps to take a look at the attributes. So things like pollution and noise. Obviously no pollution with monorail, but it does have 80 noise pollution around it. So we can compare that to some of our other modes. So for instance, a train station, that's 115, so that's much louder. If we look at metro, underground is significantly lower. It's 50 instead of 80, but an above ground is the same. If we look at cable cars, also 50. And then traditional buses, the bus depot's 50. So the monorail is going to be a little bit louder than all of those. So just something to keep in mind. When we look at the ferries, the depot is 75, but each stop is 50. So 50 is kind of that sweet spot. I guess the ferry pier is a bit bigger, and that's where you can have two ferries interacting, and that's 70. So we're going to dive into all of that, but the thing I'm most excited about is the new roadway options. So I mentioned this in the DLC video that I think that this is one of the most important things introduced in this particular DLC. You get the asymmetrical roads, which can really help put down some traffic issues. So this right here is a 3-lane asymmetric road. You can change which side the 2 lanes are on. You also get some highway options. So you get this bidirectional highway, two-way highway, which can be really helpful. These have higher speeds. So you can see right here, the speed is 100 as opposed to a normal road where the speed is 40. So that's significantly faster. Sims will choose to use that, and it will get people where they need to go quicker. And if you have a lower demand for a particular roadway, this can be a great way to bypass your city. And if you're going through an urban area, you can have the sound barriers, which will make it a little more palatable to the neighboring buildings. It also introduces 2-lane highways, which can be really helpful, particularly if you have an area like this where maybe you want to have lane mathematics apply, shut out BIFA, and you can shrink this down, and now you'll have a dedicated turn lane right here. And you can even jazz this up a bit more and make this a dedicated turn lane by having a 2-lane highway, bump this out, and now you have a dedicated turn lane. And you can see that just makes a really smooth merging movement. So I'm going to keep it here, and we will just drop a lane off and come back to it. But that can be helpful. And it can also be helpful in your roundabouts. And of course, it's going to give me problems right now because I'm doing it on the fly. Okay, it's not going to work right here because this roundabout's too small, but that's the general idea. Is you could add a 2-lane road here, and then you'd have proper lane mathematics. And then it also introduces a 4-lane highway. So that, if you love highways, that might be the road for you. Coming into the medium roads, the collectors, it does a couple of things that I love. So it introduces this minor collector, which is a 2-lane large avenue with grass. So pedestrians will walk in the center. You have the 2 inner lanes are drive lanes, and the outer lanes are parking lanes. I like to use these in places where maybe I want to have a collector in the future if it's needed, but if I don't need it, at least I have the right of way preserved. When I upgrade these, I don't have to demolish buildings. And an example is, let's say I had this here. I've preserved that roadway width, and in the future, if I want to upgrade it to a 4-lane road or a 6-lane road, I don't have to demolish buildings. It's easy to do. And then the other thing that's really exciting is it introduces this large avenue with bus lanes. So this is your first roadway in the game so far that has dedicated bus lanes. So this is incredibly valuable if you have a bus corridor and you want to prioritize that, or you want to have like a quasi BRT or something like that. You can use this road as part of your BRT network. Dedicated lanes. It acts as a higher speed corridor. So it also adds roads with monorail tracks, and right here, which is to be expected, both there and here. So you can have 2 or 4-lane roads with monorail, and then obviously you could have just a dedicated monorail track as well, and that's within the monorail menu. So lots of great stuff in this particular DLC. And it's really coming at a good time for us because you can see that we're having some traffic issues, and we're going to utilize some of these new roads to get traffic moving. So I did miss a population milestone in the previous episode. I just completely forgot about hitting 40. So we're going to still hit 45 today. So we're going to expand the downtown, and we're going to call a lot of mulligans on the city, lots of redevelopment to increase our population. And we also are going to fix Yumble University and get rid of that E. Now we're good. So what I think we're going to do, this is backing up here. And if you happen to join me on the Discord this past weekend, after my unsuccessful stream, I hopped on there and sandboxed a few things with some of the Discord members. And what we're going to do is implement some of what we did. So I think that the big problem here is that if you look at the city, there's one way to get across the city that doesn't have freeway access mixed with it. And then we have this, which is really the main road. This really connects the entire community. It's a real direct route. Sims are deciding to take this, and at the same time, they're mixing with that highway traffic. So that's a recipe for backups. And I know that we've paused this, but you can see our traffic was down to 82%. And when we take a look, it was backing up on the highway. And that is not at all desirable. So we're going to use our new tools to improve our traffic and hopefully get this closer to 90. So we're just going to go ahead. We'll use our basic 3-way interchange, and we will make some modifications to our network here. Pull these back. And I want to get this highway access away from this main road here. So to do that, we're just going to pop this over here. I'm trying to make this more or less lined up with our existing highway. Let's make our connections. You can see this is a little bit rougher. This is not ideal. In fact, we're going to call a mulligan on this whole interchange and try to line it up a little bit better. We could do some wonky things trying to make the road work, but we have enough money. We'll just give this one more shot. We'll line it up on this side because this is the side that we can't really change because it's outside of the city limits. There we go. And our curved road tool might have been a more appropriate choice for this. So why don't we just see what that does? So the reason why this might have been a more appropriate choice is it will give us a perfect connection once we get that guideline. Unfortunately, it's not going to give us the guideline. So at that point, well, actually it will right here. So in the wrong direction. So we'll need to reverse that, but I'm glad that I got the guideline because that means it's a perfect connection. There we go. Look at that. That's lovely. So we'll do the exact same thing over here. We'll pop this back. And this one's pretty straight, so we don't need to worry too much about our connection. And then now that we have that, I'm going to upgrade this back to 3 lanes. And we're going to need to do something with this. So we have some lumpies and bumpies. I probably should have checked the terrain here. I'm afraid to look. Yes. So that was a bit problematic. That said, we can live with it. But we want to make sure that for the rest of this, we are being very deliberate. So what we are going to do, I'm going to level a pad here. We can fix a little bit of craziness that we have with landscaping. Or we could even reconnect this area just a little bit. Not concerned about the highway. I am concerned about this junction. So I will rebuild this one road here, flatten this out. Now that we have a pad, we need to figure out where we want to connect up. So I'm thinking, I've looked at this before, and I'm planning on making a significant connection to the downtown area. And I want to have a pretty significant metro terminal down here. Metro and train terminal. So we're going to need to free up some land down here. So this would be a very challenging thing to deal with in the real world, but in the game, it's much easier. We just use eminent domain. So we are going to use a significant amount. And what we're going to do is basically look at this area right here and try to find a nice path to get downtown where we won't need to demolish too many buildings or move too many large buildings. And what I'm noticing right off the bat is that this is probably our best choice. We could do it here, but we're going to interrupt our park, and we can pull this one all the way through and maybe pull this back. So I'm going to mark this. After we look at our terrain, you can see that we've got some terrain challenges here. So let's go ahead. We're going to steal this contour line. We'll bring it. Oh boy, I'm reconsidering because of that contour line, actually. So yeah, we'll give it yeah, look at that. That's pretty significant. We're going to need to taper this off to make it work. So here's how we're going to do it. We'll look over here. We're going to grab that. We'll use our right mouse button here with our sloped tool, our slope terrain tool. We'll go all the way down here, and then we will use our left click button and just pull this up, and hopefully we have enough soil for it. So this is some significant terraforming. So what this is doing is giving us a really nice slope. So unfortunately, we ran out of soil, so I'm stealing it from right there, and I'll need to take it from somewhere else. So this is going down, and we need to gain more soil. So what I'm going to do is find a place where I can steal some soil. So interesting fun fact, the unlimited soil, I guess mod, I don't know what you would call it, that came with this particular DLC. We'll steal some from right here. We can get away with it. Then we'll come back and we'll try one more time. It's pretty darn good right now, but if I can get it to be better, I'm going to do it. And this has done some things over here, some things I don't like, but for the time being, we're going to live with it. And what I'm going to do here is send a collector up, and we're going to turn this right here at 10. We'll go 10 back. I'm going to turn off the road guidelines because I only care about the grid right now. And you might not like this right now, but I think you'll like it by the end, or at least you'll be okay with it. You'll understand. why I've made this decision. Now let's give some of this soil back, and then we will pop it back out. Just need to do that a couple of times. And I like these edges to feel a bit more gentle, and that's what I've been able to do doing that. Now right here, I've created a nice ridge, but we know that we can get rid of that. Same way, same thing. We'll actually pull and create a ridge right here, and then come to the edge and feather that out. And that's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. It can be good enough, and we can be happy with that. So I'm gonna just steal a bit of soil right there, and we'll clean it up. Try to make it look natural. So now that we have this, you might wonder, well, now what? We've got this road right here. It's not going anywhere. Well, we're gonna fix that. So first of all, let's look at our terrain. We've got a nice path here, but it's turning a bit. That's okay. We're gonna follow our new terrain and send that out. And this will break up the really stark grid that we've had for a while. And that's totally fine. And then we'll pull this down. And then we'll use our curved road tool, find our road guideline by turning that back on. Once we find it, we'll click on that guideline and turn it around. There we go. Nice connection. But we still need to make a connection to our highway. So we'll get it a little bit closer. And I mentioned that I wanted to fix this if I can. And I think that I can. So here's what we're going to do. We'll come back. We'll grab that ramp. And we'll connect that up again. And it won't like it. Well, we'll need to deal with that. Not the end of the world. So let's go ahead. We'll turn off our road guidelines and our grid and our angle, and we'll eyeball this. We'll make a nice clean connection in. Do that on both sides. And now, hopefully, it's a little better about letting me make that connection. And it is. Look at that. So you might think, it's excellent. We've unlocked the 2-lane highway. Why don't we just make our connection and call it a day? Perfect. Lane mathematics lines up. It does not. So if you look at this, we still have that ridge there, unfortunately. I think the only way to fix that would be to significantly improve this. Why don't we? We've got some time. We've got some energy. Let's do it. We are going to go through and fix this a bit. So the lane mathematics there is all wrong. They're turning back onto the highway, which is not what we want. So we're going to need to do something more, which is really unfortunate. There's nothing you can do about it in vanilla. You could try all day to make it right, and it's not going to be. So because of that, we're going to need to get creative. And you might not like what I'm going to have to do, but it is what I have to do to make it work. So I will select the elevation step. We want it to be a little more gentle than the game wants. And I don't think that we can just make our connection here. We do need to cross this. So we can step this down, maybe 1, cross a bit, and then we'll use our freeform tool to make our connection. It's not perfect, but I like the height better than the vanilla one. And if we went through and fixed all of this, I think it would look really great. But we're going to accept a little bit of imperfection, because truthfully, to get this to be totally right, we have to basically rebuild it. So like I was saying, this actually improved it. So before it wanted to loop this lane back around, and that was the only option. Now it is allowing someone to go straight or loop back around. Still, neither of those is ideal. So to fix that, we would want to upgrade this to 3 lanes. And interestingly, it's allowing two lanes to go left now. So maybe we will keep it at 2 lanes and see how it works. So with this should function now. So we're going to resume this. So this has done a couple of things. First of all the highway traffic that was going to the oil district and all these districts over here, now it's forced to funnel through the city once we get rid of this interchange. Or it's forced to prioritize rail. Depends on your perspective. And I think it's totally fine to force them to prioritize rail. That's why it's there. So we are going to make that adjustment. We're also freeing up additional land for redevelopment in the future. We can keep this running because we have connections across, so not overly concerned about them. And I'm actually going to put this on a road diet. We're going to take this down. Rather than having this overbuilt 6-lane road here, we can take this down to a 4-lane road. We'll have a consistent cross section here, and that'll improve it. So sometimes having less is more in terms of lanes, and it's always something good to keep in mind. Don't build more than you need. It's not going to help you. It's going to most likely create traffic jams. So right off the bat, if we take a look at our traffic, we're up to 85, so that's better. And this is a really busy junction, and it's probably going to remain that way. And that's not the end of the world. You're going to have some busy junctions from time to time. If you wanted to improve this, you could certainly go ahead and upgrade this to a 6-lane at the end. What this will do is add some dedicated turning lanes. So what you see is that the left lane allows you to turn left now, middle lane allows you to go straight. This one also, you can go straight in, and the right lane is dedicated right only. So that can help, and you can see that the game handles this okay. So you see that the vehicles are choosing the appropriate lane for the most part. Right here they are stopping, trying to get over. But I'm hoping, and it will likely be this way in the future after the rerouting occurs, things will be just fine. So we could do that, and that'll improve things. The other thing I'm noticing is that we're having some backing up occurring at some of these other junctions. So what you can do here is take a look, go into your traffic routes menu, and see where everyone's going. Now I'm noticing that there is both a heavy left and a right-hand turning movement, and that's what I was worried about. So we can use our new asymmetric roads through here, and if it pops it the wrong way, no big deal. You just go into your upgrade. We're already in upgrading, so we'll right mouse click it, and it'll reverse the direction. Now what that does is give us a dedicated right-hand turn lane and a left and straight. So that is really going to help us. And you can already see that queue just disappeared. So there is a bit of an issue right here. There's some backing up that's occurring because of this junction. They don't want to stop in the middle of the intersection. Not a big deal. We can deal with that. So that has really helped this out. We could also do more dedicated turn lanes if we wanted. But I think that some of this is going to clear up over time. We'll even speed this up to see how things change. Look at that. That's a really heavy right-hand movement, which perhaps isn't surprising. At this point, you have all these vehicles funneling back around. Interestingly, if we look at our traffic, we're not doing too bad. 84. So it's a slight improvement. 85. Why don't we make a few more adjustments? So we've got our rail network here that is slightly problematic. So we've got an at-grade connection here, and right here we have another at-grade connection on a collector. So this one could cause backups, and as we start to lean more heavily on our rail network, we might want to think about that. So what I'm going to do here, we have extra space, we have right-of-way. So why don't we elevate this? So we'll go through, pull this out. We're going to pop our grid back on and our road length, turn off our guidelines, go up 12, bring that up 3, just cross here, and then we will send this back over, and we will use our curved road tool. We'll have to have our guidelines back on, and unfortunately it's not going to give me something I can just readily snap to, so we'll need to eyeball it a bit, and that's no good. So it's definitely dropping down a little bit sooner than I would like. So why don't we just go for this ourselves? So the easiest way will likely be to extend this little bridge segment here. So I went 2. Why don't I go another 1 or 2 more, and then make our bridge connection. And interestingly, I think it might be this that's kind of messing everything up. I see the road guideline there, and I can steal it. Still not long enough. So I'm going to add another small segment over here. This is all about getting those bridge heights just right. For me anyway. You don't have to do this. If you're okay with a slightly lumpier bridge, you can go for it. So I have improved this here. I want to see if that power line was necessary even, and it looks like it wasn't. Good for redundancy, but not necessary for functionality. So I'm going to eliminate it for the time being. So we've removed one significant at-grade crossing. The other one that we can remove is right here. And the way that we're going to do that is simply extending this bridge. So we'll back this out a bit. Our bridge drops down here. So this is not something that I would expect to ever see in a million years happen. The rail companies are very powerful, and they're not going to build this. That said, maybe the city is willing to do so. It is valuable enough to the community. So those two changes should have a significant impact. And if we take a look at our traffic, and we let this simulate a little bit, we're going to see that this red here starts to improve. This one here may start to improve, although I do think that this could potentially benefit from an asymmetric road as well. So let's go in here and we'll take a look. Yeah, significant left-hand turning movement there. It's mainly rights here, but there are some lefts occurring. So why don't we just pop in some asymmetric roads in both directions, both loading towards this collector. And that's another fun thing. You can have it switch midway through and it'll make a nice clean connection for you there. So if you wanted to switch that for whatever reason, you could. But we're just going to add that here. And we could even have turning lanes here if we wanted to, because we can see that it's backing up all the way to here. Now a roundabout would probably be our best solution here, but I think we're going to leave this junction behind. And the reason why I want to do that is when we get to using TMPE, Traffic Manager President Edition, we are going to do a time traffic signal here, and that's going to help out quite a bit. For the time being, we're going to use our vanilla tools that we have available to us, and those tools are basically adding dedicated turning lanes here. The other thing, we could potentially remove some accesses that are maybe too close, like right here. It doesn't seem to be causing many issues, so I think I'll probably just leave that for the time being and extend this turning lane back. So what this does is provide 2 turning lanes to the right and also 2 straights and 1 left. So that is a big benefit here where you see this backup occurring. Unfortunately, they're not prioritizing the center lane right now, but in the future they will. So that'll help a little bit. When we take a look at our traffic, now we're up to 87. I saw it pop up there. So this is a very heavy movement on this highway. We're getting some backing up occurring here. That is not at all unsurprising. And part of that is we haven't done anything here. The collector just drops off into a bunch of local roads. So let's start to upgrade this and work towards implementing our train station. So we're going to have some space occupied issues as we're using eminent domain to get down here. I'm actually we're going to drop down. We're going to have a 4-lane collector coming up to this main collector road. And then we're going to have a 2-lane local collector coming up this way. And I think we're going to stop that right about at the high school. Maybe a little bit after. Right there. So we've got some significant changes to make. And we are going to lose population because of this. So we're going to need to do something to make up for it. I'm just relocating all of this 1 tile over so that we have enough space to upgrade to our collector road. Perfect. That is perfect. So the one thing I did over here that maybe I didn't need to do is we have this planted strip here. So the difference in cost is, we're looking at $80 a cell, 80 cents a cell versus 60. And then the upkeep is higher. So this might be an area, because there's no development around it just yet, that we look at it and we say we can deal with having a fairly stark transition. So we could also make some other connections, and I would recommend that, making some more connections off this road far enough back from the highway that it doesn't upset our queuing distances. And this right here wouldn't be the worst location for it. In fact, it might be nice to find a location where we can meet these two and have a complete loop. But at the end of the day, even if we just meet up with our collector here, I'll be happy. And I think what we're going to do is meet up with a minor collector. So more eminent domain as we pop these through. And then we'll make a connection here. And I want this to be a nice junction. So we will use our curved road tool to make this connection. And maybe not. And now we have another junction here. So what we're going to want to do to fix these is our vanilla traffic management. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing movements on our main roads. So this is a minor collector that's meeting up with that other, really a collector that's functioning as an arterial. And then we have our main drag here. We'll put a signal there. So now it's a free flow movement through this neighborhood. Not great for pedestrianism, admittedly. And then a signal here. You can see that there is a heavy movement here. We might even want to upgrade this to a 3-lane through here. We'll get to that in a minute. And then over here, we're going to want to do the same thing. And this is going to immediately improve our traffic flow. We'll do a signal here where these roads meet. And then again, prioritize our collector. And we'll get this upgraded as well. So now we've created more of a backbone network through here. This project could happen in reality. Lots of real estate acquisition, which is the most painful part of any planning process. I'm not sure how I feel about this route at this point. It's getting some heavy utilization. So if we take a look, it says that there's some utilization of this, but all of the freight traffic is heading this way. So that's certainly a concern. The other thing that we could have done would have been to create some sort of bypass. What I think we're going to do to resolve this, though, is to actually upgrade this. So we'll upgrade this to an arterial here, and then we'll look at our desired movements. This movement right here is a really heavy movement. We're going to accommodate and facilitate that movement. And then we're a little bit too close now, so we're going to back this out just a bit. Okay, pretty ugly, but it's going to work for us. And ultimately, that's what we want. Unfortunately, we are going to lose some of the movements that I'd hoped for with that new angle. So we might want to improve that. I'll upgrade this here, downgrade this here for the sake of lane mathematics, or as close as we can get to it. If we were completely adhering this, we'd probably want to upgrade this. We'll make that actually the movement out of town in the other direction is the heavier movement. So we will upgrade it here in this direction. And that'll work just fine. So if we were to change this angle ever so slightly, it would improve our directionality. Because right now it's funneling 2 back around. It's still working somewhat. The bigger concern is that this potentially isn't a high enough classification road. So we had a minor arterial and it's screaming out, or we had a minor collector and it's screaming out for a regular collector road. So we're gonna go for that. Even though that's not the direction I wanted to go, you can just see that it's absolutely desired. And this gives us dual left-hand turns. Hopefully that'll clear up. If it won't, a roundabout will certainly do the trick. But this is going to tank our traffic flow, and that is not what my intention was. We are going to let this run. We'll see how it works. And in the meantime, let's focus on our future downtown area. So if we look at our density, you can see that I've created a corridor density here, a little bit around here, and then around the park a bit. We're going to upgrade around here, and we're going to use this as a redevelopment opportunity. So let's go ahead and start decommissioning some of these. So in reality, this would happen one at a time. I wouldn't expect that the whole neighborhood comes through. You'd have a rezoning process occur. Through comprehensive plan, they would say something like this is the desire for this area in the future is high density. So that would be in the plan, and then people would come in and request rezonings as they want to redevelop. Redevelopment isn't really a thing in city skylines. So as a result, we're going to go our own way. So to accomplish this new area, we're going to basically remove this roadway network. We'll reestablish some sort of connectivity in here in the future. Let's move this temporarily so we don't lose our death care coverage. And I'll de-zone some of this stuff over here so it stops popping up. Whoops, that was not what I wanted to do. Well, we've got some population work to do. We're gonna deal with that. We'll start with a completely fresh palette for the most part. So I am gonna upgrade this collector over here. We'll go a little bit further. We'll need to reestablish that path connection through here. So some significant changes. But I find this to be one of the most fun parts of the game. Going back in and realizing that your city's never static. And you don't need to just accept that you built something at one point and that's the way it is forever. That's not the way cities work. So there we go. We've prioritized that, and now let's work in some of our new assets. So we've got a bunch of great ones. And the ones that I want to work in first are this multi-platform end-of-line station. So what we're going to do is we'll put this right at the entry point to Biffa's Park. So you'll notice right off the bat that underneath the main area, there's a line. And what that line is actually, it is a metro line. So if we pop down to our underground view, you'll see that I can connect right up with that. So that's an opportunity for us. We can connect up to our existing network just fine. So the other thing that we have is all of these platforms. So this is going to be tricky. We want to pay attention to our terrain, problematic. And then we don't really have any places to go with this. So there's a couple things that we could do. I think the most reasonable thing to do would be to go underground, truthfully. You could go either way. I mean, you could continue to redevelopment, that's your call, or continue redevelopment if that's what you want to do. What I want to do is just start out with going underground. So we are going to come through here and we will take our step, make it as low as possible, and just go down one. Pull it out as far as we can. That's not going to be very far. So if we're looking at reality, this is probably not the height of reality. If we wanted to improve it, we would probably take back another block. And we could certainly do that. And in fact, I think we're going to. Sometimes you got to call mulligans, and this is one of those mulligans. We will end our collector right there, and we'll pop on through, make our connection there, and then we'll need to reestablish those paths once again. There we go. Again, not the end of the world. So let's remove these buildings, get rid of this random zoning that is still there, and now we have something that we can work with. So what we're going to do is we'll terraform out a bit, we'll flatten this out, because we want this to be as flat as possible. The spot itself for the rest of the station is pretty good, but right here, a bit more problematic. Get rid of that house, and we'll start making some movement. So there's a couple things you could do here. You could just start to consolidate these lines into one or more, or you could just start to stub these out and think about what you'd want to do in the future. So I'm going to extend these out as far as I can. I don't love how quickly that drops off. You see if there's anything I can do to improve it. It might just be a vanilla quirk. So if I take it 12 tiles, it's at least a bit more gradual. And then we're going to send this underneath our city. Now, where it'll get tricky is when you interface with these other underground assets that you've already got in the city, you might not be going deep enough. So we're going to go through, we'll take this down. So that's our normal height. So we'll take that down 1, 2, 3. See if that's enough. That is not enough. 4, 5, 6 is enough. And then I'm going to pop that back up. 1, 2, 3. We're going a long distance there. And then I'm going to get just near the surface. And we're going to focus on our new rail facilities. So we're going to meet those up right here. I'm going to back it out from the neighborhood just a little bit. And then we'll pop these down. And I'm stretching that just about as far as I can to ensure that my connection is as gradual as possible. And that is a very tight connection. So if we wanted to make this a bit more realistic, we would probably take it back. We'll go back, we'll go to 12, the longest connection that we can make. And again, use our curved road tool, find that segment. And now that we have a longer stretch there, it's a much nicer connection. So now we're back above ground. We didn't demolish our whole city to get there. So at this point, we could do a couple of things. First of all, we could say we want to establish a connection here with our passenger train line. Certainly something we could do. That's probably not the most efficient way of handling this. So what I think I'm going to prioritize is creating a nice smooth connection into our existing network. But when you look at this, there's something I notice, and that is that we could, if we mirrored this connection, separate all of our passenger traffic. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just using my road guidelines to mirror what I've done before. And then we will turn this. So this is not the most efficient use of land, but it will do the trick. It'll create an interesting land use pattern in this area because the train is really going to be dictating what's happening. And now we're just past this junction. I'm going to pull it a little bit further past, at least a couple of train lengths, and then we'll make our connection. Nice, gentle connection there. And if we really wanted to take this up to the next level, we would totally separate our passenger network here, make a nice connection. That's not a nice connection, but it's a connection. So if we wanted to make it a little nicer, it's really tough in vanilla to make a really perfect junction. You can see it does some weird bending things. So you do the best that you can. And that's probably the best that you can, unfortunately. So at least now, as we come through here, that passenger traffic's going to come down, and it won't intermix at all with anything happening over here. So it's just a nicer connection. It separates our cargo traffic completely from our passenger traffic. And you see that already happening. They're coming down here, heading right in. So let's get to the downtown area again. And for the time being, I just want to reserve this land. So I'm just going to stub this in. Interesting. So as I make that connection, it breaks it. I wanted them to all look even, but it's changing it a bit on me, which is unfortunate, but it's probably not the end of the world. I'm going to try one more time to see if there's anything that I can do to make it not do that. No. There is nothing that I can do. And I'm guessing that once I make connections here, yeah, it does the exact same thing. So I'll just extend these out a little bit, just for my own sanity. And we will send those all over the place. It's going to be beautiful. So now we've got this really spectacular train station, and it has no passengers. So we could select to not allow intercity trains, but why would we do that? We want to maintain some purpose for this. And it might actually be beneficial to allow this movement. Right now, you can't get between the stations. We could change that. The way that we're going to do it, let's be really controlled with it. We'll make a parallel road right there using our road guidelines. And then we'll go as far as the game lets us take it. That works. Same thing there. And now we could create a new train line going into our menu with our train tracks, clicking on this, add a stop here. And I'm thinking of something else. So now that we have all these lines, why don't we dedicate a purpose? The outer line will be just specifically for intercity. And then we will use this new passenger line. We'll send that to the second stop there. So not very long, but it will be helpful. And we'll start to see some passengers going back and forth in between these areas. So the other connection that we should make while we have the opportunity is our metro. So we'll pop into here. We will grab that and make a connection. So I'm just going to head this, going to parallel these roads over here. And then we'll use our curved road tool to make a nice gentle connection. And we'll head these over here. And here's where we will split off. Send one over here. And we'll send one over towards our amusement park. So we could do something very significant here where we, completely restructure our network. We could add in more stops. I think I'm going to do something pretty basic for the time being. And we will allow people to get to where I think would be the most common destinations. We're going to mirror this route here and just come back. We'll get to some of the parks that we have set up. And that completes the line. At this point, you really got to start thinking about naming your lines. So from this one, I might do highway to downtown. This is our train line that we just established. And for our metro, we've got our first line. Let's take a look at where these go. You can change the color here. So we could say this is going to be our red line. This will be our blue line. And that'll be our green line. We can just name it that. Because at the end of the day, you just want to be able to make sure that you can tell apart where these lines go. Okay, so we've got some movement there, but our population has significantly dropped, which is going to be problematic because to implement the ferries, we're going to need to get a population of approximately 72,000, or that's the goal anyway. So we are going to need to give that some more thought. So I'm just going to reestablish some roadway connectivity in this area. And that'll at least allow us to maximize our density. Now, we need to remember that this is allowed use. So if we take a look at this, look at our noise, we can see that there's a lot of noise directly adjacent. So right here is probably best for office or commercial. And then around this, we can add in some residential uses. And it might be really beneficial to have some path connections made there. So we're going to do that as well. And I'm curious, we're going to test something. I'm wondering if I just add a pedestrian connection here, if it'll actually take. It will not. So something to be aware of. We'll just make a connection all the way down here. We'll turn on our grid and our angle. And then we'll have another pedestrian connection wherever we can make one over here. There we go. And now we can jazz this up with some trees to block some of that. So let's get to zoning. We need some more of everything, basically. It's medium for everything, which is kind of interesting. So part of that might be due to our utility availability. Looks like we're okay. Death care, health care. We're okay with everything except for maybe elder care. But as we start building more stuff, things will get better. I'm going to rezone this. We'll have just a bit of an office district right here. We'll look at our noise again. We'll have a little bit more office right there before we transition into some high density residential. And I'm really interested in having a ton over here because this would be a transit oriented development, meaning that people could potentially utilize transit for all of their trips. And even though I would think that this would be a fairly bad place to live, apparently the game's happy with it. That is not, I would not, I guess I would not in a million years look at that as an ideal place for high density residential, but if the game allows it, I allow it right now. So we're gonna get some density. It's the last thing we do. And I'm going through here, and what I just did is I zoned this first, then I dezoned this area so I could upzone it and not think too much about where I want to put these particular buildings, because it did the work for me. And I could increase connectivity through here before the buildings go up, make a few more roadway connections, and that's a valuable connection. That's beneficial. So there we go. Now I've fundamentally changed the character of this area, and I want to acknowledge that. So what we're gonna do is this will be an area where we take the lid off. So far we've had a height restriction throughout the entire city. We are going to change that. Okay, so the Valley District, we're going to rename that Downtown Victoria. And there's one policy that I want in particular, and that is we've had a high-rise ban. We're going to eliminate that in this area. And I'm going to lower taxes in this area to spur development. The tax relief for high-density residential, high-density commercial, and offices. And then if we look at our services here, we're going to allow free public transportation in this area. And there are some other things that you could do throughout the city. You could have high ticket prices. This is something that new that came with this DLC. What that would do is essentially deter people from using transit, but maybe make it pay for itself. It's a little bit of a tricky thing there to balance. There's also educational blimps. That was another policy that came with this. So you can see that what this is doing is it's going to take the lid off here. We'll allow level 5 buildings in this area. And what's really nice about that is now that we have this area, and I want to look, I've included this into this area. I'm going to increase the density along this corridor all the way around, and then we'll get level 4 buildings transitioning to the other level 5 buildings. And it'll create a step back effect that I think will look really nice. I'm gonna pause this for a minute so I can change some zoning. Okay, we'll take a look at our districts again. So you might wonder why I paused it. And the reason for that is if you pause it and then you dezone, the building doesn't demolish, so you can quickly change the zoning as long as it's not touching a similar district, or you don't dezone everything all at once. So I was able to dezone just the residential, then increase the density on that, then dezone the commercial after I've rezoned to high density residential, and create a nice effect there where it's easy for me to make it appear that I'm just rezoning. So I'm losing population, but I'm going to gain it back just as quickly. Now let's take a look at our district again. I'm going to want to extend that up half a block here as well. So let's pause this. And same thing, we're going to go into our paint bucket tool and just start deselecting residential and upzoning it. Now I did get the whole block here, which is not what I was intending to do. That is one of the pitfalls of this. We'll need to be a little bit more careful about this for the rest of the area. Okay, so I wish there was an easier way to do that, but unfortunately this is kind of what we have. So there is a strong demand at this point for office type uses or industrial. So we're going to probably need to fulfill that need if we want to go any further. So I'm going to look at this area. This is an area of transition and we haven't been transitioning. So I'm going to increase the density here. I also moved this cemetery or this crematorium to kind of an odd location. So why don't we relocate that? I'll move that back to an empty piece of land over here. Don't much mind where it goes. This is probably something you'd see in a lower density area, but we're working it over here because the coverage will matter a lot to us. And then the other thing I want to do is I'm going to add in some smaller office type uses. We'll go 2 tiles back near our library. So add a bit here to separate things. And then here I want to add some landscaping. So this landscaping does a couple of things. Beyond just making it look a little bit nicer over here, it will also act as a bit of sound buffering and hopefully improve things. And you see that there aren't really any sound issues over here. And I think we can attribute a lot of that to the mix of uses and then some of the trees and landscaping in this area. And look at the utilization of this through the roof. The other thing we could do if we did have sound issues that we wanted to take down is upgrade some of these roads. Looks like we do have some issues. And I'm wondering what those uses are. They're commercial, not the end of the world. But if we wanted to improve that, we could certainly add a tree-lined street here. And when you have the zoning selected, you can click on the noise pollution and actually see which districts are disturbed. So that can be really helpful because residential is really sensitive to those noise issues. So things are going to keep improving over here. Let's get a couple more office type uses. We're going to extend this out a block. Turn on all of our snap twos. Just continue to mirror what we've been doing. We'll fill in a couple blocks here and we don't even need to put water pipes in. Over here, our old water pipes are all wrong. I'm going to fix those right now. There's no real need to do that, but I like to do it just to make myself feel good about things. So I do want to see what's happening over here. Our traffic flow is up to 87, but we do have some problems here. This is certainly an area where maybe we look at this and say we need some more local connectivity, or we just eliminate this one and just allow this to come directly downtown. Really, the problem is we need another freeway access over to this area. We don't have it. We don't really have space to add it at this point in time. Adding more local connections is probably something that would be beneficial and maybe something that we'll pursue in the future. But that future's not now. We're doing fine. So let's take a look at some of our other transit options. And I want to take a look at blimps. Okay, so to create a blimp line, what you're going to want to do, first of all, you put your blimp depot somewhere. It doesn't necessarily need to be where you're going to place a blimp stop. So I'm going to place that over in our industrial park. It's nice and flat. And this shouldn't disrupt the neighbors at all. Let's make sure we're using the right kind of roads here. Add that right there. And then we'll add in our blimp depot. And this is needed to get blimps running. But so we have blimp stops and then the depot. We're going to need to connect the depot to the stops. They'll provide the blimps. And these, again, it's kind of a touristy thing. So if you're going to stop it anywhere, you could stop it near, some touristy type things. So what I think we're going to do, we'll kind of ham it up over by the university. We'll add in a blimp stop over here. And then let's see if there's one that we can work in over here. It's kind of tough. It's not really a good location for this. I'd love to put one over here, but I would need to terraform a ton. just for demonstrations purposes, we are going to do it right over here. Maybe not the most suitable location, but it'll do the trick. Call a mulligan on that idea. We're going to move that over here. We will cut off this roadway connection. We'll add the blimp depot right here. So we're losing some residential and some office. We'll need to replace that. We've been going in the wrong direction with residential, but we're finally crossing the 40,000 threshold, and that's making me feel like we're making progress. So we'll add our blimp stop right here. Oh, we're going to lose the rocks. Or we can move our post office, which is what we're going to do. So we'll move our post office over here, and then hopefully we can place our blimp depot without any disruptions outside of some pretty ugly terraforming. Oh, landscaping issues. All right, we're going to go back to the drawing board on that, put this back, and we're just going to deal with a bit of wonkiness with this rock. We'll add in a rock. So the last thing we want is a bunch of terraforming issues. At least that's the last thing I want. So we're going to just be okay with it. We'll come over here. We'll pretend that everything is fine. There we go. Nothing to see here. We have preserved the rocks. So we're fine. Let's go ahead. We'll adjust the terrain just a bit and see if there's anything that we can do to improve this. It is just going to be a little steep here, and that's okay. We can have a couple of spots where things are steep. Okay, so now that we have 2 stops, we can go ahead and draw our lines in. So wherever I draw these lines, they are going to operate. So just something to keep in mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this a scenic route for those in the blimp. So we've got our connection there, but we do need a connection to our blimp depot. And for this one, we're going to be very utilitarian. We'll just head up the side of the city and make a connection over here to our depot. And now we can go to our blimp line, just make a connection like you do with any other form of transit. And it'll probably be the only blimp line we have. So I'm not overly concerned about the naming of it. Let's fix the terraforming. This is, again, a very steep slope. Probably not the most ideal location for this, but we will make it look a little bit better. Again, this is an asset that I personally, I don't use it often in my private builds, but if it's something you like and this is the type of amenity you want in your city, you can certainly do it. And there they are. Let's take a look at what this looks like. You see that we get an interesting view of the city. Unfortunately, it's a bit messy. It might be easier to just look at it like this. And you see that you can get a nice vantage point of different parts of the community. So one thing I want you to notice is the ad you see on the side. It's Yaks of Energy. We could change that. So we could come through here and we could have educational blimps, which will change this to a school advertisement eventually. That's a citywide policy at this point. I'm not sure that this blimp is going to change, but it might be a future blimp that'll advertise education. Let's see what this says. Wash your feet. Wash your teeth, wash your feet. Okay, well, it'll change that, and what these educational blimps will do is switch advertisements to be educational and slightly boost education, no cost. So really no disadvantage of using that unless you like the Yakko Energy, or whatever it's called. So there we go. And our population's starting to really grow. We're going to continue to make it take off. And the way that we're going to do that is to continue to sprawl out this way. Not something I love, but we're going to do it anyway. We now have some terrain. So this came about when we terraformed here. This wasn't a problem before, but it is now. And I say problem, it's not. There is terrain in the world, and you build around it. The game doesn't handle it great all the time. So that's my main critique. So what we're going to do to make this a little bit more palatable is mirror. what's happening here. We're not going to build up to this road anyway, this arterial. So again, here just lots of stretching and feathering to make this work. And now we can look at our terrain as we lay out our roads in this area. We absolutely should. I think we can go about a block in and over, and that's about it if we want to maintain some sort of reasonable terrain heights here. We'll cul-de-sac it out right here. And this is going to be really difficult to develop unless we send a road back here. We could have some sort of user over here, but reasonably, you don't need to develop every square inch of your city. Over here, it'll be a little bit easier. We can again mirror this. We're probably going to want to take this down another 4 tiles. Maybe not even 4. I just want to make sure that we're not going too high and disrupting our terrain heights. And then over here, we're going to again turn this in. And I'm pausing that because I know that we just disconnected our water. So we'll get that reestablished. And I used the wrong road, which is something I often do. So we'll just get that upgraded. There we go. Now, if you really wanted to maximize density here, something I sometimes will do, I'll look at this road and say, I never want to develop along here. Just add a fence. And then it takes away your ability to do anything there. Add a nice, use the curved road tool to make that nice connection there. And we can continue to all the way down here if we wanted to. Why don't we pause it just for a moment? Mainly because that fence was going to take out our power line again. So we don't want to do that if we can at all avoid it. And what this allows us to do is now come out here and maximize our density. So I want to get some zoning against that back wall, that back fence area. And then we'll leave these as large lots. We can have some landscaping back there. And it's kind of a more suburban development pattern back here as we start to break down from our historic downtown area. So we've already got water pipes more or less underneath our roads. Some of them where they don't belong. But we can't. Nah, I was going to live with it, but we can't. So we won't. There we go. So now we can do a little bit of work over here. And what I'm thinking is we are going to have some commercial uses along this road here entering the city. Not great. This is a strode, but I totally would expect to see something like this. The traffic volumes themselves would dictate that someone would have interest in developing something here. And my guess is the city would allow it. In a utopia, we would not. We'll again add that fence here, add that separation, and that gives me the ability to zone a little bit further onto this road. And we're gonna get some lumpies and bumpies, and we're just gonna overlook those. We'll be okay. Then along the train here, we're gonna back that out, switch that to some commercial uses that can tolerate the sound a bit better. And because we are trying to reach a population threshold, I'm going to get pretty dense with this zoning and just zone everything I can. And then along here in the future, we will have some ability to add in some more assets that I think will fit really well. But we don't have those just yet. So let's speed this up so we continue to gain population. We continue to need more office. So Colossal City. There we go. That's really important. And it's not just because we get the nuclear power plant and the floating cafe. Those are great. But the reason why it's important is we get one more area. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to buy some tiles right now. We're buying this tile and this tile. And we'll get into why in the next episode. But this is all because of fairies, basically. So we will worry about that in the future. For the time being, though, we're just going to continue to speed along and try to reach our population threshold by meeting the needs of the city. And I think that we've done a lot today. Now, granted, not all of it is related to transit modes. We've done a lot with roads, which is part of this whole DLC. So I'm just extending some of this out as I have the ability to do so. And trying to be sensitive to where I know roads will go in the future. Rather than zoning there and needing to demolish buildings in the future, let's just think about it, give it some thought, and only place these buildings where they make sense. I missed a little bit of zoning, it looks like, so thankfully, notice that, able to get that connection made. This right here seems like a missed opportunity in 2 different spots. So there's a great opportunity, especially now that we have a really direct connection to that new transit terminal. We could increase our pedestrianism here. I wonder if I can trick the game into allowing me to make this connection. I can. There we go. And then we're going to get rid of this one tile building right here. We won't touch those, but we'll make the connection. Now we have a very ugly pedestrian connection through here, lumpy and bumpy and crazy, but it'll work. So that is kind of cheesing the game a little bit, but sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do. I'm curious when we're going to see some pedestrian activity through here. And it's not taking it. Bummer. I thought that normally that'll take. Try one more thing. Yeah, it's not liking it. So we'll just accept our one small win here. And it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And again, more office. So we are going to line an office district along the coast here. So let's look at our terrain. This is very valuable views. I don't know if I could say that with a straight face, but there are views of some kind. So there would be some level of interest and probably a whole lot of petitioning to move that terrible water treatment facility. But for the time being, there is some synergy between universities and office. So we are going to take advantage of that synergy and add in an office, little office area right here. Again, create level pads here as best we can to ensure we don't have steep cliffs going off the edge. There'll be some. Let's make it as good as we can. And just going through here, I'm noticing that there are a couple of spots where zoning didn't take. We'll just make sure that we have those in there. We're good. And then we could, again, continue to think about where our grid will go eventually. So we could just say we're not going to extend out and make some connections here. That's another option. And truthfully, it'll probably make a more interesting roadway network in the future. I might just go that route a bit. And the nice thing is this is all already in the water system, so we're covered there. And we're slowly approaching our population threshold, and we're going to make it. And I think the way that we're going to make it is to follow our university and extend this out just a bit. Again, we'll use our curved road tool to line this up. Let's find some of our straight segments and just make those connections. We're going to make this closer than our previous one. So in our previous build, we made sure that those connections had at least one tile gap in between them. We're not going to do that this time. And again, using our curved road tool, we can make all of our connections freeform to make some of those trickier ones that you can't do with your curved road tool. Nice connections. Very nice connections. So let's change where our power is connecting. This is very temporary, but it'll do the trick and allow us to zone some more of this land. So we're just going to extend our pattern out that we had before and make our roadway connections in the same area. This will serve the university well, and it'll make good logical sense. Now this whole area is covered with water, so we should be able to just fill it in a bit. We want to add in some commercial uses in here as well, and do so in a thoughtful way. And there we go. We've extended our university, and while I was doing that, we crossed our population threshold. So I think we're going to leave it here, but let's recap what we've done. We've gone ahead and we've used our multi-platform end station, brought transit downtown, increased the density down here, really rethought our highway network, started to use some of our asymmetric roads, and added a blimp. In the next one, we will cover ferries and cable cars and really start to dive into some of those mechanics there as well. We'll also place some of the unique buildings that come with this, such as the boat museum, the locomotive hall, and the traffic park. And we will create a BRT system using the large avenue with buses that we looked at the start of the build. So I hope that you liked this. If you did, please hit the like button. If you aren't subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. And I will see you in the next one. Here is a brief city tour. Take care. Bye-bye.